So, I think that the decisions I make in my life are important. Not all of them, but there are a lot of decisions I make in my life that are important. And day to day, I strive to make better decisions as an individual outside of being an artist. But, like, also as an artist, I'm striving to be better at my craft. But I'm also trying to be better at defining my intentions, and a lot of art, or I would say 100% of great art, has a very well defined intention. And intention is defined by your personal circumstances. It's who you are. It's the unique story of you that connects with other artist, that connects with other human beings. Jordan Peele once said that when you find that unique story to you that no one could ever experience but yourself, then you're onto a universal idea that we've all experienced. That's what universal ideas are. So that is a long way around to say that the art that I create is a product of my intentions, and my intentions are a product of who I am personally. So when you're looking at my art, I would like for you to take into consideration the person that I am. And I think what I'm getting on to here is a larger conversation about separating the art from the artist. And we'll kind of go down this road a little bit, and I'd like to hear what you think in the comments. If you want to join the Discord or the Twitch community, you can share your own art and your philosophies on art, music, writing, filmmaking. Join the community over there. But I think what I'm talking about is when you listen to a piece of music, you're kind of on the tail end of that creative process where the art has been conceived, the art has been created, and now you're kind of perceiving the idea. You're interpreting the idea. So when people are listening to your music or reading your writing or watching your films, part of them is looking behind the curtain at the person that created the piece of art. And there's another portion of yourself that is suspending your disbelief and just going along for the ride, just liking the song, just watching the film, reading the work of art that you love, dancing to the song in the club when it's played at the right time. And then there is that, reflexive surface response to art. But then there's also the lingering connection to the art. Great art stays with you. When you watch a great film, you read a great book, you listen to a great song, you find yourself thinking about it hours later, days later, weeks later. And those subconscious reminders of this piece of art that's hooked you for some reason, it starts to connect these pieces of art to moments in your own life. So these songs are more than just something I heard on the radio. They become a touchstone for a moment in your life. They become a touchstone for other relationships. Like, that was the song. When I hear that song, it reminds me of my best friend. It reminds me of my mother. It reminds me of a father or a sibling. And if you love a song, or let's look at a worst case scenario where, let's say you love a musician or an artist and you decide to get that artist tattooed on you. And then that artist makes a very public, terrible decision, or something is revealed about that artist. And now you're walking around with a tattoo of that artist on your arm. Are you going to separate the art from the artist, in that perspective? But I think that fundamentally you would have to either actively disconnect your perception of the art from your emotions, which I think is almost impossible, or you have to have such a shallow connection to the piece of art that you're able to disconnect the art from the artist. Like, for example, someone might say, hey, I really like this song. And you'd be like, you didn't know that that person is problematic. And you heard this thing about them. And they might say, you know what? I didn't know that about them. I don't like this song that much. Don't really care. But I think if you find a really beautiful piece of art that you're connected to, then the perspective of the artist that created it is 90% of the enjoyment. I mean, you have that surface level 10%. The song hooked me. I hear it on the radio. I've read the book and it's fun. I watched the movie. I enjoyed it. But the kind of song that you carry with you for your life, the kind of film that you watch over and over and over, the kind of book that you identify as certain characters from that book, you're going to want to know about the intentions of the artist. And you'll have this inclination to try to separate the art from the artist because of a selfish feeling of how it's connected to you personally. And I understand that selfish, no, this is not this song. This is not only a song created by this artist. This is also a moment in my life. I was part of the interpretation. I was part of the culture. I was part of the audience that loved this song. And this song was nothing without this audience. The song was an inert object in the ether until the audience loved it. And I understand that. And that is true. But I think you need to understand the connection of the artist to the piece of art and maybe recontextualize things. I'm gonna go on to one more point, and then I'm gonna take a look at some questions from the chat here. But let me get a sip of something. So Miss Minto says, my question is for a lot of those people that don't put their true selves into their music. Would you believe that it's always the case? So what you're saying is, if somebody doesn't take their music seriously, but then they go on to become problematic, is that what you're saying? Mentos also says, those lingering art pieces for art is what you need to conceptualize the person enough to really truly take in their work in another light and look at it from a different perspective. So with that being saying, is it always good to separate that from the art? I can't type that. No, I'm following you, Miss Mentos. So, the bigger question is really in this conversation is it right to separate the art from the artist? What is the correct stance? Should you say, hey, I'm not going to let this terrible person ruin this moment of my life that is encapsulated in this piece of art? Or are you going to say, I can no longer digest this piece of art because of the decision that this artist made? And I think that's the bigger question. The bigger question is it okay, or what is right answer? Yes, let's separate the art from the artist, or no, you have to throw away the artist with the art. And I think the answer is neither yes or no. The answer is not black or white. I think there's some kind of contextual moment for everyone. And there's this idea where before we were all interconnected through culture and through TikTok and the internet, even before that, when there wasn't such an interconnected conscious culture between so many different parts of the world, you would digest the art of your local region. You would hear the music of your local musicians. You would hear the paintings. You would see the paintings. You would hang the paintings of the local artist in your home, because there wasn't this interconnectedness of, I could just buy a painting off the internet, or I could just download music. When you were only connected to the world that was tangible to you, you only have the art available within your reach, And for every famous artist, there's a small regional artist of a similar style that's not getting noticed, So there's part of hey, if you find a piece of art that you like, and then you realize that there's something problematic about the artist, I would hope that it would inspire you to find artists of a similar style and genre and raise their voice up, So you don't have to separate the art. you realize that this artist created this negative work, but they've birthed a genre, they've birthed a style. And for every one of these artists that are huge, that do bubble up to the surface, there's 100 or thousands of small artists that are painting with the same colors that deserve the same attention. And I think sometimes it might be the universe saying, this is not an inspirational artist. This is a cautionary tale, you know? So it's like saying you can't watch a horror film because it makes you think of the negative things, like a horror film based on a real murder. And like, are you separating the real life events from something creative, you know? And there is something about, Miss Mentos is mentioning here about how a piece of art might not hit the same once context has changed the meaning of the piece of art. So at first I really liked this lyric, or I really liked this story, or I really liked this movie. But then when I found out about the artist, when I hear the song now, or when I see the movie now, or when I read the story now, because I can connect the intention back to the artist's real life actions, I can no longer appreciate the art in the same way. And I think that is the very human reaction that we all have, that is the correct reaction. And that in order to separate the art from the artist, you have to actively dodge that kind of subconscious withdrawal you're having, unless you're not connected to the piece of art so closely, you know. And you know, it's different for everyone, but I think that the art is the art. In my personal dissonance, it's like an artist like Picasso. Like, I really love some of the art he did, and like a lot of it was very philosophical, and I like the way he broke art down into these like fundamental pieces, and he would kind of deconstruct art philosophy. And I also love rooting your inspiration in a human being, like having a muse, like this person is inspiring me, so every piece of art that I'm going to make for the next year is from this muse, whether it's a person or an animal or a moment in your life. I love the way that you can follow Picasso's life through his muses, the individual. Like, there's real humans behind all of his paintings. And I love that there are all these amazing, in a way, like the story they tell you, for every great man there is an amazing woman. And instead of like saying that these great men wouldn't be anything without these women, I think what you're saying is that sometimes history sidesteps pointing the camera at the women, you know? And as I've grown older, I've learned the story of Picasso is the story of a man that was kind of a womanizer and was manipulative to all these women. And a lot of these muses that inspired him to be a great artist over decades were treated unfairly by him, were maybe exploited by him in a way that as a young artist growing up, I didn't understand, I wasn't taught. And now as an older artist, as someone who's kind of learned about life, learned about history of these artists, and kind of filled in the details with the things they don't teach you in art school, I have a different relationship with Picasso's art, because I can look at these paintings that I've loved for so much of my life and name the human being's first and last name and their history and the what the woman was inspired by and what her life was like. And this is a real life painting of that person that Picasso painted, that it's no longer just this deconstructed philosophy of art. It's a page of a journal of an artist, and the journal tells me about who this person was during this moment in their life. And I think that's really what great art is it's journal entries into people's life. So whether it's a painting or writing or music, it's all, everything is a self-portrait. Even portraits of other people, they're really portraits of the artist. Everything is a self-portrait. Everything is just a journal entry. So when you're looking at a song, or you're looking at a painting, or you're watching a film, you're just looking at a journal entry of the artist. And to read someone's journal entry and try to separate them from it is a Sisyphean task. So don't. Own up. Say it with your chest. Are you going to support this artist? Or are you not? Don't give me this, I'm going to separate the art from the artist shit. Are you going to take the good with the bad? I think there's something here that we can learn. And it's not that you don't separate the art from the artist. It's that some artists are cautionary tales. They're horror films. And it's not always like the decisions they make in being horrible to other people. A lot of artists may be self-destructive, and over time, they go down a self-destructive route that's unhealthy for themselves and their community. And it's not like they've inflicted negativity upon other people. Maybe they've inflicted negativity upon themselves. But it's a cautionary tale. Look at a story like Nirvana, like Kurt Cobain. I would not encourage you to separate yourself from the terrible decisions that Kurt made. I would encourage you to look at his life as a cautionary tale. So with your life as an artist, you won't make the same mistakes. And I think that's a good way to move forward, to appreciate a piece of art while not appreciating the negative circumstances that created it. It's almost like a horror film that's based on true story. Yeah, it feels exploitative, but I think all art is exploitative. So the larger question is, or my answer is no. You should not separate the artist from the art, but you have to be conscious that you are supporting this artist. If you can't say it with your whole chest, then maybe you need to take a step back. Find another artist in the same genre that's got a better philosophy, or preach the cautionary tale. What tale? The cautionary tale. What can we learn from the mistakes that this artist made? How can we become better people and better artists? Because art is just life. So when you see these people becoming a terrible person, they're also becoming terrible artists. When you see people being terrible artists, they're probably also terrible people. And those things, they go hand in hand. They are separated because life and art is all the same thing. It gets messy. Good people make bad decisions. Bad people make good decisions. But we learn, we become better people, and we move forward. And if you see people that aren't, learn from that. Cautionary tales. I think that's what I would say. No, don't separate the art from the artist. But realize when you're unable to speak with your whole chest to support what the artist is doing, maybe you've stepped into a cautionary tale. All right, I think that's it. Sisyphean. Yeah, that's a real word. Look it up. I use that perfectly. Miss Mentos says, I love what you're saying, to say it with your chest if you support the artist and art, because you have to back it up. Artists with that art, they put it out there, but don't do what they did. Yeah, I used to think it was Sisyphean, but it's Sisyphean. Well, all right. I'd like to grow the community, so if you want to join the conversations, hop into the rant, please like, subscribe, comment, join the Twitch or the Discord. You can come share your music, share your art, share your poetry, share your writing, share what any kind of creative outlet you have. Share pictures of the food you've cooked. Hey, share pictures of the brain surgery if you're a brain surgeon. Let's see your creative outlet. I'm joking. But yeah, join the community and keep being an artist. And I want to say, if you haven't heard it recently, I love you. I'm proud of you. You're becoming a better artist and a better person every day. Keep that shit up. And I know as an artist, sometimes you probably have big feelings and big emotions. Part of being an artist is that you're working with the heartstrings and with emotions. And sometimes that can be difficult. And, being a human in the easiest of circumstances is tough. Whether you're dealing with conflict from your friends or your family or work, or a lot of times you might just be dealing with conflict from within yourself. But I would like to remind you that as an artist, you are a superhero and you have a superpower. And what it is you can take these big feelings, these negative conflicts, and sometimes they're positive conflicts that can just get overwhelming, and you have a conflict with yourself or your family or your community. You can take all that negativity because you are an artist. You could take all that negativity and you could transform it into something positive. So you take all that negativity off your chest and off your shoulders. The bad day I've had, this is the week I've had, the shitty day at school, the shitty week at work, the conflicts with my loved ones or conflicts with myself. I'm going to take all that negativity. I'm going to ball it up into this one dense ball of negativity. It's like an iron sphere that's, if I dropped it, it would go through the earth. It's heavier than Thor's hammer. And I want you to take all that negativity, all the week, all the negativity from the week, the month, the year, your life. You're going to take it and you're going to use your superpower to transform that negativity, and you're going to spread it into your work. You're going to express yourself. You're going to write a song about it. You're going to write a poetry about it. You're going to direct a film about it. You're going to come up with a new recipe with that energy. And you're going to take all that negativity, and people are going to be so inspired by the way you can take these moments of your life and transform them into these pieces of artwork. And this artwork becomes a positive part of your community, positive part of yourself, and I'm proud of you for that. I'm proud of you for having that talent. I'm proud of you for expressing that talent. I see that. You are that person. And it's an amazing tool you have to take all those negative feelings. And you're not going to take it out on your friends. You're not going to take it out on your family. You're not going to take it out on your community. You're not going to punch a hole in your drywall. Don't take it out on yourself. Don't take it out on yourself. Don't take it out on yourself. Take it out on art. That's what it's for. So keep expressing yourself. Proud of you for having that superpower and using it. See you next time. Not the drywall. Peace.